To be a man, you got to beat the man. Dusty Rhodes is the man. He is a tower of power. He is too sweet to be sour. He is the rap master. There is no other. There is no equal. The man that built the Omni is Dusty Rhodes.
Court and you're not having fun, you shouldn't be there. So I've had a lot of fun in court, but my great fun was in swamping the opposition with motions. And I love doing research, and so of course when I went to the law library I just found tons of material that I wanted to bring before the court, and these lawyers were absolutely stunned because the average motion filed against me is about one paragraph. I usually filed 9, 10, 15-page motions, and because Latin is the traditional language of the law, I sprinkled my motions with whole paragraphs in Latin. Well, this made the opposing lawyers furious, because even though Latin is the language of the law, none of these lawyers, of course, could read any Latin. And actually, I had a couple of decisions against me from the judge. The lawyers got the judge to issue an order that I could no longer use foreign languages in my motions. So when you can, well, I didn't just use Latin. I would sometimes copy a paragraph in Spanish or German, French. See, I use the Oxford English Dictionary a lot, the OED. And the OED are enormous volumes, and whenever they define a word, they'll give about 2 pages of citations going back to the year 1 AD, and a lot of them will be in foreign languages. So I would copy these down and present them in my motions, and of course everybody was totally mystified. In fact, a lot of them I wasn't able to translate myself. But I was never embarrassed about that, because when we deliberated on these motions, they never dared ask me what this meant, because that would be admitting they didn't know what it meant. So, as I say, I was never embarrassed by that. But I wrote The Rape of Justice because after some years in the courts, I realized that I had certain advantages which the average American citizen does not have. That is the ability to do this writing and research. Because our legal system is nothing but words and paper. And of course, some of the words are outrageous and a lot of the papers are outrageous, but they get away with it because that is the system. So what you've got to do when you go into court, give them all the words and all the paper that they can handle, and then you get on top of the situation, because they begin to struggle to keep up with you. You're not struggling to keep up with them. I would be filing these long motions and they would be arguing them. And the motions are argued in the judge's chambers. I very seldom got into court, because the mission of every lawyer who opposed me was to keep me from ever getting into court, which they usually did. But I would keep them in the judge's chambers month after month for 2 or 3 years.
Well, you see, we started out as a colony of Great Britain, and then, presumably, we won political independence in the American Revolution. But you see, the American Revolution was not against the bank. The American Revolution was against King George III. So we won against King George III, but we didn't win against the Bank of England, of which King George III was a major stockholder. So King George lost this wonderful colony over here, but he retained the banking control and continued to get his interest and his profits from his American colony, just as before.
Okay, let's go from King George to the Federal Reserve. What happened in between? Because there was some time in there. Some people say that Andrew Jackson was one of the best presidents this country ever had. Could you tell us about him, and what did he do in regard to banking?
Well, you see, immediately after the revolution, we had our wonderful independence, and we could have the 4th of July and shoot off firecrackers and still pay interest to the Bank of England, which no one seemed to mind because they didn't know about it. And so Andrew Hamilton reestablished the Bank of England presence in the United States of America immediately after the Revolution, called the First Bank of the United States, which Jefferson strongly opposed. And when Jefferson became president, he refused to renew the charter of this foreign central bank, the First Bank of the United States, so it went out of existence. And in revenge for that, England declared war on us, and we had the War of 1812. Which was simply a banking war. Of course, you won't read that in any history book in England or in the United States. They tell you that American seamen were being impressed by the British Navy. They would stop American ships and impress American seamen. And this was the occasion of the war. Well, it had nothing to do with it. It was simply the Bank of England said, we're going to punish the United States for refusing to renew the charter of the First Bank of the United States. So anyway, the First Bank of the United States disappeared, and then Nicholas Biddle, an agent of James Rothschild of Paris, chartered a second Bank of the United States. And it was doing quite well until Andrew Jackson came along, and he said to the bankers, you are a nest of vipers, and by God, I will rout you out. And so he did. He removed all of the government deposits from the Second Bank of the United States in 1836, which caused it to collapse. And in revenge, the Bank of England suspended all American paper, which caused the first Great Depression in the United States, called the Panic of 1837. That was strictly a banker's panic,